that's the one that I want.
My tongue sticking out.
So this is for sound sync. So that's just going to sync all our audio up, so you're not going to have to worry about this.
Okay.
All right?
All
I'm
right.
going to fix this microphone for you. So
Okay.
I'm going to just turn it so that way it points down.
Okay.
There you go. And you guys, ready? Cell phones on site?
Did you get that other
I have
sheet?
This one. Did you?
Okay, I didn't write anything
Okay.
on the other
Yeah,
one.
You can just keep that then. Thank you.
It's just it gave the examples, and
Right.
so I didn't have room to write after every example.
It was mainly just to get your thoughts flowing.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, well, good. I'm glad.
And then I fell asleep.
Oh. Hope we didn't bore you then.
No.
Okay, great. So first I'm just going to have you state your name.
My name is Sandra Salo,
And could you spell it for me?
Sandra Salo.
Just to make sure I spell it right.
Okay.
So can you first tell me a little bit about your family?
Well, most of the older elders in the family are all gone. I've lived longer than my mother did or my father. Outlived a husband. I have two beautiful daughters. That one is in South Carolina and the other one's on the coast of California. So they couldn't be further apart. And occasionally they come and see me. The one from South Carolina is coming in March. And we're going to go through about 5 boxes of pictures.
Yeah, you said that you had saved those boxes so she could save them for you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. And what about your brothers or sisters? Did you have
I have
brothers?
one brother. He's 13 months younger than I am. And he has had real serious health problems ever since he left the Navy. He retired from the Navy, and he and his wife had 3 children of their own, and they fostered about 20. Some of the foster children still, even though they're married, come back to visit. And I have 3 cousins that are still alive. One in Seattle, Washington. My sister-in-law, my husband's sister, is in a care home in Seattle. And her husband's living there with her to help her out. Both of my daughters graduated from high school in Rancho Cordova, here in California. I grew up in Kentucky. I was born in West Virginia, in Cerrito, Canova, West Virginia, in a house that had been turned into a hospital, and my mother was in a basement room. She didn't like it, so she didn't stay very long. My grandparents lived in Cerrito, Canova, and my mother's parents. And I spent a lot of time with them when I was, a little older. My grandmother was a Cajun. She came from the New Orleans area. And she married a very staunch Baptist minister. Well, he was a part minister, part something else. I'm not sure what. But he was not happy when she came up with a lot of her what things she was raised with. I specifically remember one thing, and that's she would tell us, my brother and myself, once she put us in bed, there were snakes under the bed, so we couldn't get up until morning, till the light came in the room. And she had a doll about this size that had the head broken off, but the piece would fit back on. And every once in a while, when we were getting a little wild, she'd bring that doll out and snap its head at us. scare us to death.
As a warning.
Yep. We would kind of get quiet.
Right.
No more roughhousing.
And this is your grandmother, right?
Mm-hmm. My grandfather worked on B&O Railroad. That was Baltimore and Ohio, I think. How long do I have to do this? Okay, I saw you looking at the watch. And he had an apartment up in the coal mine district in West Virginia, and he would do his work on the train up and stay overnight and come back the next day. So she only saw him every other day, actually every 2 or 3 days. And my grandmother and grandfather Bratton had adopted my dad, who was a Edward Bratton, and his mother was a Cherokee princess. She died in childbirth. She already had 8 children when my father was born, so, and that was Barnhart. And they let his sister, my great-grandfather's sister, adopt my dad, her and her husband, because she couldn't have any children. And I had an uncle who was an alcoholic who just about drove my mother crazy. He would come home to visit and hide bottles all over the house so he'd have his little drink when he wanted it. And other than that, we've all been good. Those are the bad parts. You have anything else?
Tell me about your relationship with your brother. Did you guys get along?
Oh, yeah. I was his big sister. In fact, when we came to California, he got a job. He was 16 and I was 17. And he got a job in a horse barn over about 3 blocks from the house. And I'd go over and help him pitch hay, the hay that the the horses had been on all night. And we've always been close. His wife is a drama queen. I better not say that. Can you cut that out? Okay. She is, though. Right now he's having problems with his lungs. He's had heart problems. He's in Phoenix, Arizona. And I used to go down there, but one of their adopted children, they've moved into their home with them to help take care of him. So there's no extra beds down there. And now that I can't drive, I'm not going to go. Although they're coming up here in April to take me to lunch from Phoenix. It's a long ride. No, they're coming to a wedding in Manteca, and then they'll come up here the next day.
That'll be nice.
Yes, it will.
Do you have any favorite memories of you and your brother growing up? Crazy stories that trouble that you would get into?
Yeah,
Maybe
but
not
I can't tell it on film. Let's see. He could probably tell you more than I could, because I think probably by the time I was 13, I was going my way and he was going his. He was in the band, and he's the reason we moved to California. He ran away from home when my dad corrected him with a smart smack on the back, low enough to do some good, and he ran away from home. And so my mother went to get him in New York. He was selling magazines for some company that they'd picked him up, and she brought him home, and then they started making plans to come to California. And I was probably next to the last month or so of my senior year. Excuse me. Got a cold. We did get in trouble a lot together, but he always ran to my father's mother, Grandma Bratton, to get him out of trouble. Although I followed him home one time with a broken arm, and it was out like this. He fell out of the swing that he wasn't supposed to be in, and I was going to make sure I told him that he was in the swing he wasn't supposed to be. I was bossy. I think I was.
Sisters are supposed to be. So tell me about how you met your husband.
I went to San Diego. I went through brevet clerical training to go into the courtroom to record, and couldn't get a job. And my neighbor, my mother and father's neighbor, had a daughter that was going into the Air Force, and she wanted somebody to go along with her. I said, I'll go. Something different, something new. My mother and father had a fit, but I went anyway. And went in on January the 2nd, 1962. I think it was 62. Maybe it was, I got out of school in 59, 62. And went to San Antonio for training. First time on an airplane. Flew out of Los Angeles, and I'd been there about 7 months, and there was 4 Sandras in the squadron at Mather, and we had a squawk box. It didn't work, of course. It cut out, in and out. So every time somebody would come to the squadron to call for their date to come down, the 8 Sanders would show up. But he came, and I met him there. He was with SAC, and they had been transferred from Travis when they broke up the wing down there. And we were married a year and 7 months later. In April, you know what? I went in 60 because we were married in April of 63. And our first child was born in September of 64. Second child was born in October of 65. And we found out what caused it and quit having kids. And we were in the service until they kind of ran me out, because in those days, even married, if you had a baby in the service, they got to take care of it until it was 18 years old, besides whatever the father contributed to the household. And we lived downtown Sacramento, and then we moved to Rancho Cordova. Both girls were born at Mather. They fought like cats and dogs from the beginning. 2 entirely different personalities. And boy, let me tell you, when you want them to have their own personality and they're opposite, that's trial and error. One was very athletic and well-mannered, and the other one got meningitis when she was 14 months old, and it affected her hearing. And so she was a little bit put off by the world until we worked it out with Sacramento Hearing Society and got her at least somewhat balanced. She sees this, she's going to have a fit. But I love them both. They're different girls altogether. And thank God I could let them be different, because ain't too many people compare their kids and bring up resentments that last a long time. And then my husband died in 98, and I retired from DMV. That was an experience, because everybody that comes to the window to see you thinks you got your hand in their pocket, and you don't. Law enforcement and your legislators make those rules that we had to go by, as far as amounts and so forth. It was interesting. Met a lot of different kinds of people there. Got a lot of good friends, even to this day. In fact, when I went to Wally World this morning, one of my friends took me, and we met at Sacramento Hearing Society. Widow Persons Association, because once I lost Marvin, I had to go around people that, in the same boat. And it's a wonderful organization, saved my life, kept me with both feet on the ground instead of laying around whining.
And that how your marriage lasted for so long? Like, what's the secret to a happy long-lasting marriage?
Well, I won't say we never fought, because we did. That was one thing, though, we didn't fight in front of the kids, because I felt very strongly about that, and he did too. He was pretty easygoing too. And of the two of us, I was kind of the one that got bent out of shape more often, because he just let the world go by, But it was 49 years we were married. We would have had our 50th anniversary the following year in April, before he died. But he was diagnosed with prostate cancer 5 years before, actually 5 years and 4 months. And they told him, our wonderful doctors that practice, and that's why they call it a practice, that if he lasted 5 years, he would be free. And he lasted 5 years and 3 months. Went through some chemo, went through some radiation, thought he was home free, and then it came back. But those were rough years. And every once in a while I'd go out and find a card in the seat of my car where he'd been by during the day and didn't want to come in and bug me. But that was a rough time.
So tell me some of your childhood lessons that you've learned. Tell me some of your childhood lessons that you've learned.
Lessons that I've learned? To keep my mouth shut quite often, most of the time. And you never get anywhere if you don't put away for the rainy day. Thank goodness. Marvin and I had that track on going the same direction, because I wouldn't be able to stay here if we hadn't. And I love this place. It's like you can see there's something going on all the time. And if you want to stay in your room all day and all night, that's fine too. It's your own person. I don't know any others, really. Other than,
go ahead.
No, other than church. Yeah. Yeah. And I've come closer to the church since my husband passed away. He was never, he was believed that if you were a good person, you were a good person. And I always believed you had to worship the Lord and so forth. I was brought up in the Methodist church. And so that was one thing that kind of sore spot between us. But I did take the girls to church, and they have somewhat of a background so that they can make their own decisions about that.
And tell me about your grandson.
Oh, my beautiful grandsons?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got one that graduated from South Carolina University, and he's in a little town south of Madison, Wisconsin, and he's a restaurant manager of a chain of managers. The other one just graduated in 13. In June, he graduated from Clemson, and he's an engineer, and he's working for General Electric, and we text every morning wherever he is. Sometimes he's in Denver, sometimes he's in Pittsburgh, sometimes he's in Boston, but he's I guess internship for GE, 6-figure job. The other one's happy. He's married, and he's happy doing what he wants to do, and that's manage restaurants and skateboard at 27.
Good for him.
He's still a child. But he'll break an arm or something and quit. Maybe.
We'll see.
Yeah. I don't think you better put that in there either. I could really get in trouble for that. But I'm proud of both of them. They're happy, and that's the main thing. My daughter and her husband are now empty nesters, and they know now what it's like. My brother's never an empty nester, as they've always had kids around. I think they said something like 20 foster children, and then they adopted 2 of their foster children, girls, and the one girl is living. Her husband and daughter are living with him in Phoenix. I can't think of anything else. I know it's there's a lot there that I just don't remember. Facts and fiction, and I'm not going to make it fiction.
No, of course not.
Clerical in the navigator wing of Mather.
How long were you in the service for?
2.5 years. I didn't serve the full 3 years because I got married, and in those days they didn't let you stay in once you got married because they didn't want to support those babies the way the Military Code of Justice was written. They got to support them if you had them while you were there.
Oh, okay.
So it didn't happen. I got out just before I started making babies.
And what did your husband do in the service?
He was a jet and missile electrician from the SAC wing on Mather when he came up with them from Travis.
Do you remember your first date with your husband?
Do
you remember your first date with your husband?
Yeah. I was sitting in the beer lounge, and him and his buddy came through, and my girlfriend was there with me, and they sat down and started talking, and the next day we went shopping. We didn't have cars, and they did. And then they had I can't remember what, Dinker Hall was the place where enlisted people went for dances and dinners and movies and stuff like that. And then they had a theater on base too. So we got married at the chapel on Mather, and the chapel's still there. I don't know whether they use it or not, but it's still there. I was out there a couple of years ago, and it's changed so much. Of course, you don't even have to go through a guarded gate anymore.
What's the name of the chapel?
Huh?
What was the name of the chapel?
It's just a Protestant chapel at
I know which one
Mather.
you're talking about. Yeah.
And they're right in the middle.
Yep, right there.
There was one road that went that way and one road that went this way. The only way that you could get in was go in this way and out the other side.
So I'm going to ask you to do something weird.
No.
Sorry. Just, so if you could look out the window,
Okay.
and then you can crack a smile.
Okay.
I don't know if I have any good jokes, so I apologize. But I'm going to get one from over here.
You're going to fall over that walker.
Oh, no, you're fine.
That'll make you laugh.
Yeah, that would be funny, wouldn't it?
And then you can look out. I don't know what those guys are talking about. But I don't know what they're talking about, but you can just take a gander at them.
That's your boss and the other guy.
And you can just take a look at them, and if you want to crack a smile, you can. You don't have to crack
Maybe I don't want to crack a smile. He's playing with his little lap. I'd like that little computer he's got. Yeah.
It's nice.
The only thing is the little ones have such little font.
Yeah.
You turn the font, get it bigger so I can read it.
Mm-hmm.
Then the battery goes shot.
What are the names of your daughters?
Shirl, Shirl, and Lori,
Okay.
Laurie. My husband did that. I had a name for a boy picked out.